Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this special session on education and youth. Reminder, if you're not speaking, good to go. Please put yourself on mute. Yeah, my name is Nigel Spence, and I'll be chairing this extended session this morning for the next hour and a half. We've got a terrific opportunity to discuss education and youth with three, I'm sure, excellent papers coming up. Let me start the session, though, please, by recognising that for those of us in Australia, we meet on Aboriginal land, and I would like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we meet across Australia. We have the privilege to live and work on land which has been in the custodianship of Aboriginal people for thousands of years, and so we acknowledge that with respect. Yeah, I'm chairing. I'm an associate of the Institute for Global Development at the University of New South Wales, and I've had the pleasure of being on the conference organising committee for RDI 2021. So we've got this session now on education and youth. Now we have the three papers, and less is good, if I could say to our presenters, because that will give us more time for questions and discussion. Change the order from what was in internet is a bit doubtful as the session goes on. So Dechavez presentation will come first, and then Rebekah and Mukunda, and then thirdly Margaretha. We'll do it in that order. And
sorry
I'll
to
introduce
interrupt,
each
Nigel.
Paper and each speaker as in turn as they come up.
Nigel, it's Tim.
Now with questions and
just
comments,
get you to turn your video off. It's very glitchy. You're coming through, so just turn your video off and continue, I think.
Okay, sorry about that. Is the audio okay, Tim?
That's much better, thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Tim. So yeah, we'll with questions and comments. We really encourage lots of questions and comments to engage with the content that's being discussed. So please put your questions and comments in the Q&A or in the chat. So let's get underway, and let me begin by introducing January Dechavez, who is going to speak on educational research in the new normal, the case of a teacher education institution in the new normal. And January is an instructor and research coordinator at the Bicol University College of Education in the Philippines. And the Bicol University College of Education is an accredited centre of excellence in teacher education located in Daraga, Albay, the Philippines, where January teaches research in education, principles of teaching, English for academic and professional purposes, and English Level 8. She also has been a teacher of the teacher and school curriculum and the teaching profession for undergraduate and postgraduate students, and has taught academic reading and writing and other basic and a variety of subjects at junior and secondary high school. So a wealth of teaching experience, and we're really looking forward to what you have to say, January. So I'll hand over to you, and we'll let you know if your time limit is coming close. Thanks. Please go ahead.
So much, Nigel, and welcome everyone to this session on education and youth. I hope my sound and my video is okay with everyone. So let me continue with my session this morning, educational research in the new normal, the case of a teacher education institution. So this morning, I will just be sharing a few things. I will be sharing the result of my research on teacher researchers in our college, and how, from that research, how did we respond as a teacher education institution in the new normal, specifically in student researchers with our undergraduate students, and of course the faculty researchers or the teacher researchers. So to give us a context of where I am coming from right now, so I have shared with you all the map of the world, and in circle is our country, that is the Philippines. So if you flights away from Australia, if you're in Australia right now. And from Manila, the center or the capital of the Philippines, we're one of the region in the south, in Luzon, and we are located right here, Legazpi City. So to give you the locale of my study, let me just share with you a short video.
January, should there be sound?
Yeah, there is. I'm sorry.
Okay. Can you stop the share?
Okay.
And then click share screen again.
Okay.
And in the bottom left corner, there's a share computer sound.
Okay.
Please
Thank
tick
you.
that and then start it again.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. Okay, so that's just a short video of where I am coming from and what is the locale of the study where I conducted the research. Okay. So we've been talking about research and development for the past, actually 2 days. I've attended the pre-conference sessions, and it has been great to really discuss with different stakeholders from all over the world the beauty of research in different contexts. Considering education as one of the important factors in the development in the world, as mentioned by our by Julian Miss Gillard, it is really also an important component to be assessed in world university rankings, specifically in the context of a developing country like the Philippines. The Philippines is actually striving to at least publish articles in peer-reviewed journals and be recognized in this practice with a Western-dominated ideology. Under the Philippine Development Plan, actually it is geared towards the people's collective vision of a strong and a well-founded life. The Philippine government acknowledges the importance of improving the quality of education, research, and innovation for equity and global competitiveness. So for this reason, okay. For this reason, the teacher education institutions like Bicol University College of Education is serving as an avenue for pedagogical research endeavors. And when we talk about quality of education, it usually starts with the basic and at the same time continues with our higher education institutions. teacher education institutions serve as a pivotal avenue for pedagogical research endeavors that influence the educational research not only in the region and in the country, but in the global community as well. Specifically in our case, laboratory schools exist as an avenue for training, education, and research. So let me just continue with the framework that we have used actually. So
Sorry,
we
January.
have
Sorry, January.
yes.
It's Tim. Could you
Tim.
please just unshare and then reshare?
Yes.
The slide quality is
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay. Just share. Sorry about that. I hope I can find the screen. Okay. Am I sharing now? Not yet. I'm sorry.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, we couldn't actually read the slides.
It's okay.
That's
Okay.
better. Thank you.
Thank you. So for this particular study, we have actually tried to adapt with an A, the futures triangle of Soleil Iniatula, and we've worked on the reinvented futures triangle for BUC ILS. So we did some SOAR analysis, the CLA, and appreciative inquiry, backcasting, and of course, supported by different documentary and literatures, documents and text rather. So for this study, I will not emphasize more on this, but these are the main objectives that we have actually considered to determine the characteristics of our teacher researchers, identify their views on educational research, and to integrate future studies by the participants themselves to identify their own vision of research. I heard earlier when the Chancellor of the University of Queensland, how he actually emphasized leadership in terms of development initiative, not only in university, but actually in the community. And those, I will actually sharing that as one of the things that we have found out also in this study in a local context. So for the respondents, here they are. We have 65% female, as you can see in the table. But one key findings that we have found out in their profile is this. Most of them are actually, the range of their service is from 7 months to 34 years. But when you look into their research involvement and their attendance to research-related trainings and seminars, it is actually glaring, and it is actually for us, for those who are in the administration or in the middle management, actually, it says a lot about what is happening with our teacher researchers. So for the we have identified different constructs actually from our I hope it's here. Okay, from our respondents about their perception about educational research. So in terms of their mental abstraction, they actually understand what educational research is. And dominantly, they shared that educational research is a systematic process. It is an in-depth study or an analysis of data, which brings enlightenment. It solves problems. It allows for innovation and improvement and discovery or development of best practices in teaching and learning. Most of the respondents have an idea of the what or how and why of educational research. And if we look, however, if we are going to look into the way that they view themselves as an educational researcher, though they fully understand the processes and the functions of educational research, the respondents still identify themselves as beginning researchers. no matter how long they have been teaching or have been connected in the academe. In particular, they used actually the terms greenhorn, novice, and neophyte. Also, limited exposure, inexperience, and not being updated were also shared during our discussion. Significantly, the diagram that I am presenting right now shows that, as I've mentioned, despite the number of years in teaching, they are they consider themselves as beginning in this field. Despite being beginning researchers, they also share that they are willing to learn, as exemplified by their positive attitude towards research, and they were able to emphasize that during our focus group discussion. Another key findings or key result in our study in conducting educational research. In particular, I emphasized here the educational action research. To fully understand the perceptions of our respondents in conducting educational research, we adopted the cognitive model to allow them to just freely share their thoughts, their emotions and actions towards conducting research. So we could see here that the dominant thoughts, emotions, and actions as reported by the respondents were negative towards action research in particular and in educational research in general. Action research is one of the common methodologies utilized by teachers, specifically in laboratory school. So in our case, laboratory school teachers tend to withdraw or avoid doing research mainly because of fear. You could see that here. Um, they are afraid, uh, stress, and anxiety, which is influenced by their thoughts. So most of the teacher researchers perceived research to be a difficult endeavor, which takes much time, aggravated by the lack of knowledge or technical skills to do research at all. So however, there are researchers who are also enthusiastic when they hear the word research or when they think of research. Some of them are also challenged, but dominantly they tend to withdraw. That is their action because they think um, that they are not capable of really doing research. But we have to consider that since we are part of a teacher education institution, we have three functions. We are mandated to not only do instruction, but we need also to do research and extension. Um, that's why we also allow them, after determining their profile themselves, presenting their profile themselves, and specifically their common concepts of what educational research is, we allow them to share their goals and commitment to become the researcher that they aspire to be, from the fact that they cannot go away with it if they wanted to stay within the university or in the academe. It is more on the impact that the researchers are doing in the school, in the community as well. So you could see here that though a few of the faculty members will actually retire soon, and some of them actually retired earlier because of the pandemic, um, they still express their willingness to learn and help the budding researchers in making an impact through evidence-based teaching and learning. Continuous improvement is the major commitment or step in achieving the main goal of not only completing, but also publishing their completed research in 5 years' time. The respondents explicitly shared their ideas of pursuing graduate studies, developing the habit of reading journal articles, attending trainings and seminars, and workshops that will further enhance their research skills. Also, most respondents underscored the importance of mentoring in their research engagements. Affiliating with experts and other institutions will lighten the journey of educational research. Ultimately, the commitment to contribute to the educational field through research begins by realigning the thoughts and actions towards the goal for greater good. So we also asked our researchers, how are we going to achieve the goal? So how are we going to contribute in the teaching and learning process in basic education specifically. They identified, our researchers, our respondents rather, identified their needs as educational researchers and how the administration could help to address this need in one way or another. As I've mentioned earlier, our leaders will really help or influence in how are we improving the processes of research in our university. The dominant construct for this theme is the need for technical support, which massively speaks about training and conducting and publishing quality research. It is followed by the demand to be given ample time and equal opportunity for all. As shared by the respondents, their teaching workload oftentimes become a hindrance to conducting quality studies. Mentoring and access to databases and conducive workstations are also identified as a need by the lab school teacher researchers. So these are the felt needs and administrative support that our respondents need as they've shared. So as a whole, researching the educational researchers using the grounded theory approach reveals the heart of the faculty members of the laboratory school. The willingness to learn and participate in different activities that will still improve their perception and their uh, skills in conducting research is actually evident from our respondents. The institution has a big role to play in providing the necessary support identified in our study. The collaborative culture of educational research is yet to be explored in our locale. However, we are actually having our ongoing research. Phase 2 of this one is actually submitted to our university to take consideration on the practices and what could be done. Uh, we are also promoting to have a comprehensive study on the profile of the researchers, not only in the laboratory school, but in the college and even in the whole university as well, using varied approaches so that we could really explore what is happening in this particular institution. And remember that maybe in the development, many development principles that have been mentioned in this 3 days actually, in the past 2 days and in this day, the earlier keynote, it's more on what one institution can do could create a ripple to other institution and even other stakeholders. And that is the beauty of collaboration in the development of uh, any organization or institution or even country. So the main conclusion that can be drawn from this study, considering the context of a laboratory school, is that maintaining and sustaining quality research outputs that impact the society entails effective and efficient people work. As reflected in the identified themes, the focus is on the needed support, not only physical or material resources, but mostly mentoring, collaboration, and administrative support, which is mainly influenced both by the teacher researchers and administrators' personal qualities and perspectives, which could lead to a healthy research culture. So how did we respond specifically in this study? In the new normal, because this was conducted in the middle of 2019 and 2020. This was actually during the COVID-19 experience. So in terms of our student researchers, we have actually navigated different strategies and methods, and in terms of their presentation, maximizing applications such as Zoom and Google Meet. In terms of, we also responded to the faculty researchers' need. We recently conducted, just this year, the special proposal write-up for the faculty researchers. We entitled it as the Evidence and Gender-Based Pedagogy, wherein we invited speakers from well-known university in our country and, of course, the heads of offices in the institution as well to share uh, topics relating to this matter, because these were the felt needs of our researchers. we also conducted the Publish or Perish, the publication write-shop for BUC faculty researchers. So in this one, we purposely selected those who have completed research. So they could really write something that they could take away from their studies and publish or share it, disseminate it to a larger audience. So we really have to publish so that others will not perish. So this is actually what we've learned also from that a certain activity. And
January,
yes,
we need to wrap
yes,
up
Paul.
then.
So this is my last slide, actually. Thank you so much for the reminder. And how do we now thrive through disruption in the education sector? Just remember RDI, respond properly, deliver your deliverables excellently, and of course, continue influencing and leading others to the goal and the vision that you really aspire for your institution to achieve. So these are actually my last slide, and thank you for the reminder of the time. So don't forget to cast your vision, collaborate, create. It is not a weakness to ask for help. So collaborate with one another, be authentic, take action, advocate whatever it is that you are doing. And of course, identify people that could really help you, institution or stakeholders, immerse them into the culture that you wanted them to have, and then institutionalize change so that it will impact the main stakeholders. Our main stakeholders are the students, and we need to improve ourselves because we cannot give what we don't have as teachers. So these are the references that I have in my slide. So if you have any questions, so this is ISCO of BU. ISCO is a short for scholar in our university. So thank you so much, and it has been a pleasure to share my findings with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, January. Thank you very much indeed. And I'm turning my video on, and Tim, let me know if that's still not working so well. Yeah, really interesting, January. Thank you. Great piece of work that you're doing there. Great project that you're doing there. Now, I think what we'll do, everybody, is we've got until 11:15, so we've got a good amount of time here, but we do still want to keep tight. If there are any questions now for January, that would be great, because of technical difficulties, we may lose January soon. So any questions would be good to get to her now. Otherwise, there will also be time at the end of all of the speakers for, I think, extended question and discussion. And hopefully January might still be with us at that point. So are there any questions? Are there one or two questions now for January? And I can see Thomas has asked one here. Where do your researchers publish their studies?
As of the moment, most of them are publishing in CHED, Commission on Higher Education recognized journal that is nationally. We are still working on really publishing in Scopus or ISI journal. So we are still on that. Not yet there, but going there. So most of the time we're really looking for exploring those publications and journal. But I hope we could get there soon. Yeah.
Great. Other questions? Not a question, but I just really like the way the project is helping people to rethink themselves as scholars, as researchers, right? Because you made the point really well. I thought that teachers, like other professional groups, they value and recognize the importance of research, but can't imagine themselves as researchers easily. They think it's technically too difficult or complicated or something. But you're helping teachers to rethink themselves as both teachers and researchers, and overcoming some of those obstacles. I mean, I assume, January, not everybody's going to make that transition. Some will still resist and don't want to be researchers. Is that right? I mean, what sort of numbers or trends are there in terms of who want to take that journey and who don't?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Resistance is really an issue not only in our university, but in this country. You know what? if we are in our comfort zone. So it's really difficult to really face that we need to do this. As I've mentioned earlier, due to the pandemic, some of the faculty members even have early retirement because of the changes that we are having. This is specifically in conducting research, and the way that it was from the administration, it was said that it is a requirement because it is one of our functions, and we are evaluated on that aspect. So actually, it's like 40 to like 40% are now going okay. I hope we increase the number, but to get that 60% more.
Yeah.
But that's a rough estimate.
Great. January, what about this? Margaretha's asking, the publication fee is often a problem, whether the funding should be aimed for a better teacher development program or for publication. What do you think about this issue?
Oh, thank you so much for that question. Yes, publication fee is often challenging, but in our case, since the university has a separate fund for publication fee, specifically for CHED accredited journal, and of course for those high-end journal. I think in terms of the teacher development program, in our case, we don't have actually an issue with that because of the partnership. That is something that is really good about the university where I am in. In terms of teacher development program, the core is really collaboration, and the way that the funding is not coming entirely from our university. So we don't have any issue on that. But in terms of the publication and all, it boils down to what motivates you to really do research and really disseminate your study. Because the issue is this: we have lots of proposal, like for example, you have 54 proposals, but out of that 54, only, for example, 49 were completed, and out of 49 completed, only 4 will be published. So it's the trend, and it's like it's the passion, it's the motivation to really disseminate this information to help the future generation and even the teachers in our country, because we cannot always just rely on our that's why we're promoting evidence-based pedagogy. How do we teach? Are we really understanding our students right now, the change in the landscape of our youth right now? So that's actually the main concern that we have. Thank you, Margaretha.
We'll need to move on, but there are another couple of really good questions here. I wonder whether you could try and address these briefly, January.
Okay, sure.
There's a question here from Thomas. Do you think your educators have enough theory about the different research methods?
That's the main issue. We don't have that one. So when I went back actually from my Australia Award scholarship, I see that what we know is only the survey research and the descriptive research, and that's it. And then we have to explore more. Oh, there is ethnography. Oh, there is other correlation study, other design that we could use. There is mixed method. So yeah, we have to explore on that, and we really need the help of other experts to really go here and train us all. Thank you.
And it sounds like you're doing some good ideas to sort of link together. It sounded almost to me like buddy systems or teams or pods of researchers and teachers together, working together might be a way to get that kind of transfer. A different question from Rovi. What strategies have you come up with or uncovered to improve teacher researcher ratings at your university?
Right now, we are more on responding to their felt needs actually. And we have a really good increase in terms, though it's not that significant but we have more teachers getting involved with the proposal writing as of the moment. It's because it's an openness. I've mentioned earlier, and authenticity. I really wanted to create a safe space wherein I am the coordinator that they can easily open up with and talk to regarding their research undertakings, because I don't want to be like bridging the gap, and I don't want to be someone that they cannot really easily approach. So communication, open spaces, like what we are doing, like every month, for example, I will just ask them a question as I've presented earlier. We have our BUCE research group that is actually a private Facebook group. All of them are the faculty members, and they can just throw questions, even their rants for our administration and all. But of course, it's private. It's for us. So it's like openness, really. It's just like allowing these teachers to just really share who they are and what really their aspirations in the future. So just a few more steps, and we were working on strategies. I'm actually trying to create a framework on what we can do with that, specifically in our context. And I'm looking into different frameworks from Australia and even UK, how they are really supporting their researchers, undergraduate, postgraduate, and the faculty researchers. So I hope that I could actually create that at the end of this year or even next year. So we're working on that. So thank you so much for that
Thank
question.
you. Great, terrific, January. Thanks so much. Look, I really hope your internet connection allows you to stay through to the end, because I think there'll be some more questions. Certainly, I've got some at the end of the session. But now we should move on to the next presentation. Thanks, January, and let's go to the next presentation from Rebekah, who's the lead presenter, and Mukunda, and this is on the effects of COVID-19 for children and youth, and program adaptations for sustainable development, learning from Asia and Africa. And Rebekah is going to present, and Rebekah Cochrane is International Programs Coordinator at Transform Aid International, based in Sydney. Lots of experience in international development over the past decade, having worked with a range of organisations, including Transform Aid, ACFID, Act for Peace, and World Vision. And also author of this presentation, Mukunda Adhikari, is also an international programs coordinator at Transform Aid International and a researcher at the Institute for Sustainable Futures at the University of Technology, Sydney. And I think, Mukunda, you're doing a PhD in international development at the moment at UTS. So thank you, Rebekah. Thanks, Mukunda. I'll hand over to you, Rebekah. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Nigel, and thank you, January. Is my screen sharing okay?
Yes.
Looks great.
Okay, excellent. So this work that TAI did, or Transform Aid International, it was led by the child and youth team there, and led by my colleague Mukunda, who's with us as well. Just as a short background to our organisation, Transform Aid International, or TAI, it's what you describe as probably a medium-sized international non-government organisation by Australian standards. We work in partnership with local grassroots organisations in 36 different countries. So what that means is we don't implement any of the program work ourselves. Instead, we fund and we partner with local autonomous based organisations. So these partners are mixed in capacity, as you define it, and probably mixed in size as well. The work that we did was actually with our child and youth programs, and our partners who work in child and youth are generally involved in something called a CYCC program, which is the Children, Youth and Communities for Change program. This is a long-term kind of rights-based and strengths-based program. And the partners that we work with, all of their logos are listed up on this slide. They work within their own strengths, and they generally work with children and youth who we would describe as rights holders, and then also with parents, community leaders, government, and they work on issues that are important to young people. So each of the CYC projects, they basically work on themes of survival, protection, participation, and development of children and youth. There were a range of partners who were part of this research, and the partners came from all different countries. Those countries were Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Philippines, Nepal, Uganda, and I think that's it, 6 countries. So the questions that we were asking in this research were basically questions that we were asking ourselves at that time. So it was conducted in June, and we were asking ourselves as a TAI team, how is COVID-19 impacting the children and youth in the countries in which we're working with? And then how are our partners adapting their projects to address those impacts? And our purpose in asking these questions was twofold. It was to consider the ways in which we could support our partners and their changing needs. And it was also to collect information about the adaptations that they were doing in programming, and also to facilitate cross-learning amongst the partners. And because our partners are autonomous local organisations, when COVID-19 hit, it wasn't a matter of creating a plan or implementing it from TAI or from our office in Australia. Our role was basically to support the local plans of the individual partners and their organisations and the various needs that they had in their context. So in the methodology of this research, the first thing we did was to implement a survey amongst our partners. It was kind of an opt-in survey where they could choose whether or not they wanted to do it, and they did it with the children, with their caregivers present. It was done in June, as I mentioned, and a total of 906 children and youth were surveyed, including 567 girls, 339 boys. And as I mentioned, these were the countries that we surveyed in. I forgot to mention Cambodia before. So Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Cambodia, Philippines, and Uganda. And there were 17 questions that we asked children. The questions were around these 6 themes: knowledge of COVID, feelings about COVID, the prevention and support protection they were receiving, the impacts on the school and learning, and then the coping mechanisms that they were using to get through this pandemic. When the surveys were conducted, they were conducted by staff who are already regularly conducting monitoring and surveys with children. So it was done in a very child-friendly manner. And we also had parents or caregivers present with children when they had their surveys done with them. Then the second part of our methodology was mainly qualitative. It was data that we collected from our partners in a cross-learning forum that we facilitated. We did this in order to help them to be able to share amongst themselves the adaptations that they were using in order to cope with COVID-19, both from a programmatic lens as well as an operational lens. And the point of that was for us to learn how we could better support them, but also for them just to be able to learn from each other. The limitations to this study, there are a few here. So the sample size was relatively quite small when we were conducting surveys with a total of 906. The collection method was quite mixed because we had countries in all different kind of context. So there were some that were remote or done via Kobo toolbox, others were in person. We felt that the remote surveys could have been less accurate than the ones done in person. There was a mix of respondents or children, so that there were different stages of the project. So when they were asked about their vulnerabilities or what was worrying them, we had some children who were very early in projects and others who'd been with the project for 9 years and there had been more progress. There was probably a risk of losing meaning in the responses when our partners translated the responses back to English for us, and a few questions were missed by some of our partners. So the results of the survey were very interesting to us. I'll go and just share some of these. I'll share some of them, not all of the results. So the first question was, have you even heard about COVID? And basically overall, every child had heard about COVID with the exception of just a couple of, or 1%, 1.8% in the Philippines. When they were asked about their feelings at this point in time, the top 3 feelings were worried, lonely, sad, and then bored was the final feeling. Fear, worry, and anxiety were the most commonly expressed feelings across all countries, with lots of different words to express that feeling of anxiety. 3/4 of children across the board mentioned this, and the highest number of mentions of anxiety were in Cambodia and Uganda. So when children were asked what worries you about COVID, this was actually an open question. So children were allowed to nominate 3 things that worried them about COVID. The top worry across the board was basically the disease itself. It was relating to fear of losing a family member, lack of access to medicine for COVID, or potentially, the symptoms or the disease and fear of that. There was also fear of loss of education and worrying about the ability to return to school eventually. Within that, there was also fear about how to get on with education at home. And then surprisingly, the third worry was loss of family income. So that was quite a common worry that children were feeling. And in relation to that, some children mentioned food security being an issue attached to loss of income. So here are some quotes that some children mentioned during this question. I'm worried because my mother stays at Darker City and I'm in the village. I cannot meet with others and I have to stay home the whole day and night. That was a 14-year-old girl. Another 16-year-old girl from Bangladesh. I feel very bad because I cannot go out of home freely. I can't play. School remains closed and we're not able to conduct group meetings. And then in Uganda, a 7-year-old girl said, I feel scared of the disease killing us. A 9-year-old boy, I feel scared about the virus that it might affect our family. Or an 8-year-old girl that said, I'm worried for my life. So reading through the quotes about children's worries was actually quite sobering. It was quite a difficult thing to read through for myself personally, and lots of quite honest feelings expressed about their worries. When children were asked who is supporting you and protecting you during this time of COVID, Bangladesh and Nepal mentioned their family almost exclusively, and that was inclusive of grandparents and extended family. And then the majority of children in other countries also mentioned their family as their main supporters and protectors, which is quite understandable given that there's generally less social protection in the countries that we surveyed in. Cambodian children mentioned family, but also 48% mentioned their village chief or their community leaders, teachers, and volunteers. And children in the Philippines and Uganda also mentioned the government in playing a role in helping them and protecting them. When asked how they were feeling supported or how parents were looking after them, children said that they felt supported during COVID from their parents or caregivers by being told how to follow health instructions, being told how to wash hands and be hygienic, for food and time given to them, and then a good environment provided for home study. When we asked children if their school was closed, 100% of children at that point in time said that their school was closed, and that was June 2020. Children only mentioned families support as their main means to continue learning in Bangladesh. So we then asked them, how are you continuing your study? So family support was quite strong in Bangladesh, but surprisingly it was not strong in any other country. Self-guided learning was common in Nepal and the Philippines, and particularly in the Philippines, the government had introduced modular or paper-based learning and had quite a good program to deliver paper-based learning to children through schools. But generally, if children were doing self-guided learning, they mentioned revising over old notes or making use of books that were available to them. Technology was mentioned quite commonly as being used to continue schooling, but that was mostly television and radio. Online learning was mentioned frequently in Cambodia and Philippines, but not very accessible in terms of online learning in other countries. So that was quite in line with some UNICEF research that was done in the time that said that 463 million children worldwide were unable to access any form of remote learning during COVID-19 school closures at that time in 2020. So when we asked children what other activities they were enjoying at that time, these were the activities that children were enjoying and engaged in. And then what has made you happy or sad during COVID-19? Interestingly, the things that were making children sad were very much in line with the things that were causing worry. So it was COVID-19 itself, the fear of death and disease, social restrictions, study being closed and school being closed, and reduced family income. And then things that could provide happiness or joy to children was the idea of COVID recovery or cases going down. They enjoyed having more time to play and with creative activities, and definitely more time to spend with family too. Once again, this is really interesting that when we asked, what is your hope for the future? Once again, relating directly back to those top three fears. Children wanted a COVID-safe world, treatment for COVID-19. They wanted this disease to go away. The second thing, where they were fearful of the loss of their education, their hope for the future was going back to school and being able to resume their education. And where children's fear was loss of family income, their hope once again aligned to that. They wanted an increase to their family income. So the next part of our research was finding out from our partners how they were adapting their projects to address these impacts to children. And in this way, we asked our partners to come together for a child and youth forum, which was like a learning community that TAI regularly hosts. And we asked partners to deliver a paper on their adaptations, both their programmatic and their operational adaptations, and come together and discuss and present those papers, as well as have breakout groups for discussion. So overall, in terms of the adaptations that our partners shared, the examples that they gave us of adaptations were very much around training volunteers and their staff on supporting children in their mental health and their psychosocial needs. Programmatically, they use storytelling approaches to explain COVID-19 to children. In terms of education, partners helped to initiate Google Classrooms. They worked with governments to distribute the paper-based learning materials to children. Where they could, they supported digital media or mobile phones to help communicate with hygiene messaging. They supported caregivers to access alternative incomes. They offered vocational training to youth for alternative livelihoods. And they also encouraged young people in particular to come up with their own ideas. Young people were involved in hygiene monitoring in their communities, delivering messages to their communities, helping younger children with their studies, and even preparing content for radio announcements. Partners also really went to strengthening the local civil society groups for leading appropriate interventions. So with this approach, most of our local NGOs or partners really had to strengthen their volunteer base, because with the local restrictions that they were facing, staff couldn't go into communities necessarily themselves and had to really rely on those local people to keep delivering the work of our programs or their programs. And so the volunteers were really focusing on child protection, especially, and also dealing with increased rates of child marriage and gender-based violence. So lastly, I'd say the most common adaptation was the revision completely of the group methodology approach. So where normally our partners would work through child clubs, savings groups, or different types of groups to deliver program activities, these partners now had to really work through volunteers to deliver quite one-on-one, individual, small group or family-based activities. I'll give you a case study of, this is actually case study.
Rebekah, just a couple more minutes. Yeah.
Yep, that's fine. So this is the last thing. This is just a case study of a partner of ours called Share an Opportunity Philippines, or SAO Philippines. They actually started with, originally, as in this diagram here, their group methodology was they would have staff who would then implement groups, and then they had volunteers kind of sprinkled through those groups to do their project activities. And then they had to basically completely restructure so that staff were now coaching on the phone and mentoring volunteers who were then really delivering activities and coaching and mentoring and support directly to families and individuals themselves. So basically they took the components and the assets of what they had in their program and then restructured them towards the new context. And so since everyone was now in their own homes due to lockdown, the result was that the project moved from being very much centred on outworking through group methodology and then focused on individuals. And family activities were very much focused and really focused on the aim of resilience and bonding, children's protection, hygiene messaging, children's education, family vegetable gardening. They had another program here called Family Hour, which is where the partner provided a guide to really build up families and help them to reflect and to bond and to strengthen each other in relationships during this time. So I guess overall our reflections from the research, both the surveys and also in the partner adaptations, was that TAI was really impressed with the agility of our partners to be able to respond very quickly. And I think that's a plug for local partners working in their own context and being able to really adapt and respond to the needs. Partners all address the top 3 concerns of children in their own way. And the surveys gave us a lot of good information really early on and gave partners good information in being able to address children's concerns immediately. For us as an organisation, the questions that are ongoing for us are the sustainability of the group methodology approach and this new approach that we're seeing partners taking with staff coaching volunteers who then work with families and individuals, wondering if that's something that will be more long-term. We're noticing anecdotally a greater digital divide in children's access to quality education, gendered impacts of COVID-19 with girls not returning to school or maybe being involved or in child marriage, very young marriage. We're seeing we're wondering if there will be much longer mental health impacts on children. And also wondering about the role of mental health first aid training amongst partners and governments. And then wondering about the long-term effects to youth employment and their ability to access quality jobs in the future. We've also seen youth organisers really come to the front in this COVID-19 pandemic and really seen them being able to lead the way in their communities with hygiene messaging and different activities. So overall, that's TAI's experience of COVID-19 and yeah, happy to take any questions later.
Yeah, thanks, Rebekah. Thank you so much. I thought that was terrific and so interesting. So, I mean, it's just so important to get data directly from the children and the local partners during disruption. I mean, there's been a few reports and research in this vein, but not nearly enough. This is really important material to know, firsthand how this disruption is being experienced by, I think, particularly children who often, so often the last to be consulted. Look, we've got a little bit of time for a couple of questions for Rebekah, and congratulations to Mukunda for this research. Time for a couple of questions. Just post them in the chat, or you can put your hand up and just ask it spontaneously. I just want to take the chair's privilege to ask one question. I mean, the digital divide. I mean, this is we knew this was an issue already, and the COVID crisis has absolutely thrown a spotlight on how much inequality exists into the digital access and how much it's been exacerbated. The inequality has been exacerbated by the crisis. And I think for development actors like Transform Aid, I assume this is moving from sort of being a peripheral issue to, I mean, your reflection suggests this, Rebekah. This is sort of, it's got to become a top tier priority for development actors, hasn't it? How a development actor is going to respond to this? Because we know it's a problem and it's become worse. How do development actors address this?
Well, yeah, Mukunda, go ahead if you want to, if you've got ideas as well. Look, it's a big question for us with the digital divide. We're seeing children can generally access radio. It seems to be the best option in terms of education and more widespread in rural areas that radio does work. But in terms of laptops, online phones to actually access content, it's becoming a huge problem. And, you know, TAI personally we would start to look for funders who have an interest in that kind of area or can fund or have expertise in that area to be able to really invest in that. But it's also a matter of us being able to invest in that kind of thing as well. And then it's about governments and what they can provide. So I think for us, there's all sorts of work that's going to have to go ahead in that way. But also it's opening up opportunities as well, digital, in terms of monitoring and evaluation as well. Yeah, so I think it provides heaps of new opportunities, but also a lot of divide in terms of access to education for kids. Happy for Mukunda to add to.
No, just probably one of my thought would be, I think some of the partners are also working with local schools to develop or change some sort of curriculum to make self-learning material or book in remote areas. So which is not totally related to digital space, but the alternative to digital space in the remote area could be developing some sort of self-learning material or books for children. And that is one of the good alternative we have seen, particularly in Nepal.
Okay, thanks, Mukunda. I just think it's part of future-proofing kids against disruptions in the future is going to be digital equality, but it's difficult to achieve. Now we've got some big and important questions on the chat. We might, there's 3 or 4 really good questions here, which is probably all we've got time for now. Look, the first one here from Mal, did children and youth with special needs and or disabilities participate in the survey? I'm guessing their experience might be different. If so, how were they supported?
Yeah, so children with special needs did participate in the survey. I don't have the exact percentage. I'm not sure if you do, Mukunda, but all of our, like as I mentioned at the start, all of the people who did the surveys are very much trained in making sure that all children can be included, and they were very experienced enumerators in many cases and know how to do surveys in child-friendly ways, know how to involve caregivers to make sure that all children can participate. So yeah, I have a lot of trust in our partners that that was the case.
Do you have any data on how their experience is the same or different? No,
we haven't done a specific question on that, no.
Okay, thanks. Do you have any, are you aware of any cases of children losing family members, siblings due to the virus, and how much did that affect them? Was there any information about that? And relatedly, you know, did you hear of any instances of children or youth becoming orphaned or having to take on caring roles for their families?
Go ahead, Mukunda.
Do you want me to jump in over here? So We don't have that information. I think primarily the survey was conducted in May and June 2020. That was probably the initial, like, first 6 months of the COVID period. So particularly in the countries where we are working, then most of the countries were in lockdown, and then COVID was not really into the country or community in a bigger scale. So in that sense, then probably they didn't have that sort of effect when we conducted survey. And definitely, if we ask these questions again now, I think response would be totally different, because in anecdotally, we have heard many from our partners that, you know, people are dying in different communities, and then impact is severe at the moment. So I think it's a timing of survey. Because of that, we don't have particular data on this.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Mukunda. And final question for now. How else can donor organisations pivot to better support local partners?
That's a great question. So I would say that, you know, something that we're thinking about a lot at TAI is how can we actually fund the organisation itself? So how can we allow them some form of flexible funding in order to really make some changes to the way that they operate as well? And I think that we need to be really aware of our partners' needs and really just allow a lot of changes. So, you know, activities and program designs that were created 2 years ago in many ways need to be completely rediscovered and reimagined, because we're facing a completely new context. And I think that if donors hold partners to, you know, designs and goals that were set 2 years ago, it's been completely unrealistic and not even relevant anymore. So I think that we need to be really open to completely new methods of working, new designs, and new methodologies as well.
Thanks, Rebekah. Thanks, Mukunda. We need to let you go, but hopefully you'll be available to answer more questions at the end of our session. And could I ask, maybe you could just answer in the chat for us whether the report is yet available anywhere, or whether you expect it to become available, where we might access that. Perhaps you could pop that in the chat for us. And meanwhile, thanks to you, and
Thanks,
we'll
Nigel.
move on. Thanks very much. We'll move on to the third presentation from Margaretha. Margaretha, who's going to speak to us about why should schools be prepared for the post-pandemic mental health promotion of school-age children and adolescents. And I'm delighted that this is being addressed, and Rebekah's and Mukunda's paper just started to touch on this as well, I thought. Well, anyway, so Margaretha is a PhD candidate and Australia Awards Scholar at the University of Melbourne. She's also an experienced academic in the Faculty of Psychology at the Universitas Airlangga in Indonesia. At the University of Melbourne, Margaretha is working on a research project to develop a framework for school-based mental health promotion for adolescents in Indonesia. And her presentation this morning explains about one component of the work, which is about supporting schools to become a strategic context for providing mental health promotion programs and services for school-age children in Indonesia. And Margaretha draws on more than 17 years of experience working as an academic in the Faculty of Psychology at the Universitas Airlangga in Indonesia. So we're really looking forward to your presentation, Margaretha. Yeah, please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. I hope you're all healthy. I'm Margaretha. I made a slight change for now because when I wrote this, I thought there will be like post-pandemic that we're dealing, but however, we are still during the COVID pandemic. So I changed the title a bit to appreciate that we're dealing right now. So yes, I'm Margaretha, and I want to share a bit about my study and my ideas about how to support schools to become a place that cultivate not just academic achievement, but also health, because that is needed due to our challenges from the COVID So
Margaretha, sorry
yes.
to interrupt. Can I
Yes.
just get you to right click on your slide?
Yes.
Just so, no, so use the mouse and click on use the right click on the mouse, just there.
Right click, yeah.
And is there an option to hide presenter view?
Hide presenter view.
Or maybe click use slideshow.
Okay, yes. Ah, I see. Because you can see my next slide, yeah.
Yeah, we can see that. There we go. That looks great. Now.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you for telling me this. Okay, so a bit of background about me. It's already mentioned. Other than a lecturer, I'm also a counselor for children and adolescents. So I often work with children and adolescents who have the psychosocial problem, aggressive behavior, sexual identity problem. So I'm mainly working with children with clinical symptoms. But the more I work with them, I realize how should I help them better? Because when they come to me, actually, that's already in the phase when they require clinical attention. I think more children will require support before that happens, and that kind of prevention. So I check the, oopsie, oh no, it's supposed to be there's this definition from WHO about mental health. Mental health is the condition where a person can actualize the potential, can also work productively and contribute to the society and can able to cope with daily stress. So actually by having this definition of mental health, we know that it's not just about the absence of illness, but it's about how to embrace this human to be the optimal functioning of a person. So I think if I want to work in mental health setting, it's not enough only working with these children already presenting clinical symptoms. I need to work before that. I need to support them before they're presenting their clinical symptoms. So I came to Australia with this idea and I talked with my supervisors, Professor Susasaya, Peter Asopardi, and also Jane Fisher from Monash. So they tell me about this idea about how to support school to be the place where mental health promotion can be done, how we should do that. So before I'm telling you that, why should we focus on school-age children and adolescents? Of course, because from the SDG, we know education and good health and well-being is not just different, distinctive feature of SDG. Actually, they kind of collaborated. And this is especially important in school setting. Education is also a resource for health across life course, and health is also important for learning. So I think this already show why we need to take care of our children in education settings. So across the globe, we also want to know what happened with our adolescents and our children. So actually, about 20% of our children and adolescents actually is experiencing some kind of common mental health disorder, from anxiety, depression, self-harm, including suicidal ideation, eating disorder, and also developmental and behavioral problems like autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, intellectual disability, and also opposition defiant disorder. So what is interesting, actually, about 50% of adult mental disorder actually happen before 15 years old. So, and about 75% of adult mental disorders start before 25. There's this critical period of young age that actually serve a critical time for us to do treatment, to do prevention. And where we should do this, other than in a place where children and adolescents gather and spend their time most of the day, that is schools. So with understanding this, we know that there is this critical period and good investment for prevention and treatment. So mental health during the pandemic also has caused us great challenges. So for example, we know from survey that there is increased loneliness due to social distancing and social school closure. I think from the previous presenter have mentioned some of these challenges, and also increased number of reported depression, anxiety, and self-harm. I actually also did a quantitative analysis on global health of school-age children from the WHO, and I found out that determinants of suicidal ideation, so when students report that they want to to kill or to end their life, actually isolation and lack of friends. And with this pandemic, it's also like kind of strengthen this feeling of being alone, and could also be the risk for having suicidal ideation. And some family who reported to have loss due to death or illness, they also showing some kind of post-traumatic stress disorder and grief. And we also know that there is increase of violence, especially domestic violence during the pandemic, and that can also impose our children and adolescents to greater level of PTSD and grief. And other than that, because children are mostly doing their study from home, there's increased risk of overweight because of excessive sedentary activities and also snacking, leading to restrictive eating disorder. And also there's this new addition about how children can develop some kind of addiction toward online gaming or online activity, including porn. So these mental health challenges are occurring and are faced by our children and adolescents. So with regard to mental health, we need to understand several things. One, up to now, across the globe, actually young people are still struggling in terms of having a good mental health literacy. So especially in low middle income countries, we still find that young people have poor mental health literacy, and we have increased number of mental health concern. And in addition to that, from the survey, we know youth are rarely or like having lower access to mental health services. So if they're having problem, they're not seeking for help. And this actually even more severe in low middle income countries. In addition to that, we still deal with high level of stigma around mental health issue. So people still feel afraid or embarrassed if they have to acknowledge that they're having mental health problems. But there is a good resource where we can deal with mental health issues, school, because children and adolescents spend half of their days at schools. And actually, there are studies in Europe and America that higher enrollment rates happen if you provide health promotion or health services in school. Actually, it's even higher compared to where these young people accessed it in the community clinical service. So school could be like a safer place for them to have this mental health or health services. And risk for poor mental health, unfortunately, can also happen in school settings. For example, having being bullied, because that will create feeling of more loneliness, lacking of support. And we need to tackle this risk factor in school. And by that, we can improve the mental health and well-being of our students. So for addressing this, actually, there are a number of framework that has been developed. For example, one here I present you from the World Health Organization about the multi-tiered model. So this in 1994, they announced that actually in a school, there are a number of needs, diversity of needs. It will be easier if we categorize that into 3 levels of needs. So for example, one is like about 3 to 12% of students, actually they are categorized as unwell because they're already showing clinical symptoms, and they require some kind of clinical approach, a targeted approach. But about 20 to 30 students, they are at risk for developing mental health problems. So perhaps they already start smoking before the age of 15, start to engage in sex before the age of 15. So things like this risk behavior are increasing their probability of having mental health issue. So they require an indicated approach where they can be assisted with several supportive programs and also professional support. But largely, our students are here in tier 1. Most of them are not really having severe problems. Sometime in their life, they will need support. So for example, when they're feeling sad because their grades are not good enough, or their parents got problems. But what we need actually for most of the students is the universal approach, how to elevate, how to improve the well-being. And by that, we can also improve their mental health. By this multi-tiered model, we know that providing mental health promotion is not just only targeting the 3%, like 12% of children showing clinical symptoms. It's not enough to have doctors or psychologists or mental health professionals in school. Actually, what we need to think more is how we can support children at risk and how we can better support the well-being of the large community in the schools. And the second framework that actually really meaningful is the health promoting schools. In 1995, also World Health Organization showing this concept of health promoting school. It is a setting which promotes both educational engagement and also learning outcomes, because we see from the SDG, they're also related. Why we want to do this? Because we want to have better health. So if a school wants to be a health promoting school, it needs to be supported by 8 global standards that is intended to work as integration. So as you can see from this diagram, the blue color boxes are the school that need to be supported by the community, by also the green box, the school governance and leadership, and also policy, and of course the government. So we can only create a good place for promoting health if this multi-layer of support happening surrounding the school. And gladly, we announced from the University of Melbourne, especially the Center of Adolescent Health, who just recently finished the project with WHO in making the new manual of health promoting schools, because we expect that all schools can be a health promoting school. How to do this? In briefly, we say there are 4 components. One, we need to support the health and well-being by ensuring there is this healthy growth and development of students. And we need to improve the health literacy, belief, attitude, skills, and also to increase the capacity of the school to address student health and well-being. Secondly, we also need to improve the education, like to improve health literacy skill, attitude, and also increase the capacity with engaging with multi-stakeholder like schools, families, and communities. And in terms of the community, we also need to work together in order to improve the student mental health and well-being. And other than that, of course, the government should be also involved, especially to achieve the equitable health and education should be accessible for everyone, including gender equity. You can read into more details about this in the manual because it's really accessible from the WHO side. But what I want to share with you from this multi-tiered model and also HPS or health promoting school model, we know that schools can do a lot in improving mental health. There are several, if I can classify, there are 2 kinds of approach that school can do. One, we can improve the relationship. How? We can improve the climate, the school climate, how the relationship within among these people in school, the student, the staff, the teacher, the caregiver, including the surrounding community. For example, in Indonesia, we know that people who sell food for the students, if we want to be health promoting school, we need to talk with the food seller so they can sell healthy food, not junk food too much. So our students' health can be maintained. So this school climate is something important for us to work with. And other than that, we can also work on the school relationship, how to improve the relationship between student and teacher. Because if, for example, the student act as the only source of knowledge and they kind of giving negative feedback to our students, that won't create a self-esteem, like academic self-esteem for the students. They will feel the learning is too difficult, and that will have negative impact to the well-being and mental health. And also peer-to-peer, how to reduce bullying, how to improve cooperation, and also how the relationship between school and parents, how parents can be better advisor to their students during their learning. They monitor the students. So that is something that relationship-centered role for a school can do. And other than that, school can also enlarge the access to health services. There are a number of health services that can be done in school, but of course there are other services that could be accessed in the community service. So school can develop also referral system. So when they found out that their students are struggling with clinical symptoms, they can also work with a professional in the community. The second role of school can also be capacity focused. So this is mainly building knowledge and skill of the students through the education curriculum, so integrating health curriculum for supporting the general life skills, for example, like coping skills. I think it's good to have math, to have this reading ability, but other than that, we need to equip our students about coping skills. So how to deal with daily stress, how to deal with solving your problem, how to communicate if you need helps, and how to support our self-esteem when your peer kind of giving you negative feedbacks. This kind of social emotional learning are better integrated in curriculum, and it is now very important because our students are struggling with mental health issue. And other than that, of course, the school can improve its capacity in problem solving specific problem that may occur in the school. For example, if we know a number of our students having suicidal ideation, what are important things? What are the programs that we can develop for this kind of children? Or if our students, we know that they're dealing with substance abuse, what to do? In some countries, in low middle income countries, sometimes school just dismiss the students because they're seen as students with problem. But that's not the idea here. How school can create its capacity in solving this problem, but they can also collaborate with the community in dealing with this issue. So actually, if we can summarize, the role of school has transformed from expert model now into a health promoting school. I'm currently doing a policy review about how the manual of mental health promotion in school starts to transition from 1994 to current 2021. So the earlier model of health promoting school or mental health promotion in school usually rely on the expertise of this clinical professional. So it's like clinical oriented. And most of the time, we kind of focus on screening for mental health issue, who are with problem, who are at risk, And unfortunately, this approach can also create stigma and labeling. It's not nice to be in school, you're having problem and you are identified as a children or as a student with problem. That's not nice for the students. So actually now we can switch to more a nice, more acceptable approach that is health promoting school. It is a universal approach. A universal approach can be for everyone. So, and mainly it's prevention oriented, but not only prevention, we also acknowledge that there are some students who require more professional services. However, we will put more effort also on improving well-being. And with that, actually, all people in the community are the agents. We don't just need psychologists or professional to do this. Actually, everyone, including the student, the janitor, the teacher, the community can be the promoter of mental health and well-being. So this can be said that it's going to support a collaborative collegial model, because all teachers, young people, because students, they also need to give their voice about what are the things they need, what kind of support they need. They need teacher, families, they would listen. Business will provide a support like tools or application that will help these young people to obtain their mental health. School community, they can improve themselves into for better supporting the school, and government, of course, for making the policy to make sure all the facilities, equipment are there, placed to support mental health strategies. And health professional, we also support, especially when we're dealing with clinical symptoms. So if a school wants to be health promoting school, they need to develop this kind of network. And we expect to, if we striving to be health promoting schools, there will be short-term impact, mid-term impact, and also long-term impact. With regard to short-term impact, we believe that firstly, we will start to see the teachers are equipped and ready, not just for supporting academic achievement or academic process in school, but also how to strive for health. And this is especially important in this time of pandemic. We learn so much that it is not just health, but also mental health that can support academic achievement in school. And we also start to see students will feel accepted, they will feel heard, validated, because if the school only report the teacher are able to deliver this and that, but we don't really hear what happened with the students, probably we need to rethink whether we're already achieving this short-term goal. And for midterm goal, we believe that there will be some kind of impact of improved behavioral and emotional function of our student, but not just student, but also the teacher and the community in the school, and better academic achievement. And in the long run, we can see reduced referral rates. Actually, this is a better model, even economic model. By having prevention, we will have lesser fee to support for people with clinical symptoms. For example, depression, that can take years and very expensive medication for years for a person. But if we can do prevention model, that will decrease the economic expenses on support, on facilitating clinical services. And also they will decrease the probability of complex mental health issue. As I told you before, after 25 years, 75% of mental health issue in adulthood actually happen before 25 years old. So if we can do something before they reach out to adulthood, actually we will have better functioning, healthier adults that can work in our society. And of course, this will reduce the global burden of disease. So in summary,
Margaret, yeah, we need to wrap up soon, very soon, Margaretha. Thanks.
Yes. In summary, the school has strategic roles in promoting student mental health and well-being. The incidence of mental health disorder peaks in adolescents, so it is a critical period for mental health promotion. And there is a growing concern about student struggles during this pandemic that need to be attended, and schools should be the place for providing such support. Schools also expected to contribute to supporting student emotional health and well-being, including but not limited to delivering mental health services. It is more on the general prevention approach integrated in the curriculum and working with the working collaboratively with many sectors, so this goal can be achieved. So that's from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaretha. Thank you very, very much. Another great presentation. Such an important topic, I think, you know, and we know that education systems in all countries are grappling with this in different ways. You know, Australia certainly trying to work out how its schools can be a serious layer in reducing, in promoting mental well-being. I think there's going to be lots of questions here, but we've got a bit of time for specific questions for Margaretha, yep. And then we'll throw it back open to broader to all presenters. So let's go to this question from Mal. What are some strategies that schools can use to promote mental health by online means? And how can schools make sure they are reaching out to at-risk and the most vulnerable students?
Sorry, I kind of lost you for a while. What are the important strategies for online learning? Is that?
You can probably also read it in the chat,
okay.
Margaretha, but I'll just read it again while you're looking for that. What are some strategies that schools can use to promote mental health via online means?
Oh, okay. Oh, well, actually, one, we can improve the mental health literacy. So what is health actually? Mental health, so by that they know what are the problems, but also how to obtain health. So by this, they're having the skill to identify where am I? What am I doing? Have I done things to achieve my own mental health? So I think that can also be delivered online. Secondly, also teachers should equip themselves with mental health literacy so they can better observe, even though it's online, but you know, you can still observe your students, for example, for change of behavior, change of pattern of behavior, how they involve in the discussion, how they solve the problem or their task and assignment. And you can also start to spend some time to talk with them. Hey, how are you? What happened? I see that you kind of late, for example. It is already a few days in this week that you kind of late for, maybe for a few minutes. You usually very punctual. What happened? So by that, you're actually using the skill as a teacher to identify problems. If you find out that there is a problem, you can give support. If it's only like mild problem, of course you can do that, and it's already covered in mental health literacy. But if you know that there's a huge problem, maybe you need to refer that to the school counselor or school psychologist, for example. So by that, we're giving some kind of a multi-level support, not just the prevention.
Are there also
Mhm.
are there also sort of online, digital, internet-based, social media-based? Are there methods or techniques like that that can help?
Yes, actually, for now, most of the counseling session can be done online. And other than that, I believe in several countries, there are apps that are developed solely for counseling for targeting youth. So for example, in Indonesia, we have Relief, so people can access this, and the targeted consumers are youth. So they can use this for finding counselor, either in individual setting or group setting. So a number of students or young people who have similar problem, they can also talk with each other and give support to each other.
And this a second part of Mal Sharif's question is asking about the most at risk children and youth who may come from families where there's high levels of dysfunction and disadvantage. How do we make sure that schools reach those kids so they're not left behind?
Yes, good question. And I think if you found children with a medium to high problem, what you finally see is also the non-optimal community, the non-optimal functioning of a family. So you're right, it is not just working with the child, but also working with the ecosystem of the child. So that's why we need to collaborate. This is not just a work of a school. This is, it takes a community actually to take care of a child. To parent a child, not just the parent. So by that, you also need to equip yourself with mental health professional, because obviously this problem could not be solved only by school, but the school still can provide its role. For example, to support children's learning, to support children's ability of mental health literacy, to support a better quality of teacher-student relationship, so the student become more understanding, not pushing so much into finishing the task because they know this child is actually enduring divorce of their parents, for example. And other than that, we can also collaborate with professionals to work with the family, for example. The school psychologists are now equipped, they know better. It's not just working with the school, but also the ecosystem, the family, the community. They can develop certain strategies. But if they think, oh, I can't do this, I need help, for example, from psychiatrists, from clinical psychologists, they can work again with the mental health professional from the community. So the idea is not just pushing school to do all things at the same time, but also school to equip themselves to deal with this and work collaboratively in solving a problem.
Yeah. It strikes me, it's just so important to try and get that balance right so that teachers and school staff are better informed and better equipped and better educated, because it seems so often that as soon as any mental health issue arises, anxiety or depression, teachers get very nervous and immediately refer, when in fact they may be able to, as you've been saying very eloquently, they may be able to provide some very valuable sort of preventive level interventions which don't require referral of. A question here, Margaretha, how can we promote well-being literacy among teachers in developing countries after the pandemic?
Oh, thank you, Saira. So that is one of the important function of manual, like health promoting schools. I can share you later more about how WHO, UNESCO, UNICEF, they all have manuals. But this is like in a global level. It is good in terms of generic approach. So at least you know what is it. But then after that, after we understand it, the national policy level, they also need to tailor this manual, this guideline into something that is more contextual, more applicable, more simpler to be done in school. So, but I believe school can also adopt this manual and guidelines, because quite straightforward to some extent. You need to do this, even like there is like training manual. So there are already a number of points that teacher, school can learn and they can do it. So it's like that. But I believe it's not enough only adopting directly from the general manual, there will be a number of local contents. Yeah, for example, in Indonesia, not my country, we know that there is this strong weight on religious belief, how we need to put spiritual aspect into learning and well-being. So maybe we can start to integrate that with proportion. But yes, we can do that. There are a number of resources, including in the University of Melbourne. We have mental health first aid package that you can adopt, yeah, or you can join, and we can share this. I think it's a good question. That means school can start doing this. Regardless this pandemic time, we can still equip ourselves better into knowing what are mental health, what are well-being, and what we can do to obtain it, and how can we do it for our students. For example, simple. If you want to make your student to be a better learner, they need to believe that they are a learner, a good academic self-esteem. How to do it? Don't give punishment. Don't give label like you're not trying so hard. Don't push them too much. Give them the appropriate stress level and then start to increase accordingly. By that, you're developing a self-learner. You don't have to push them into working. So this kind of thing already there. So it's kind of easy sometimes, but sometimes, yeah, we just have to equip ourselves.
Yeah, but it's good to remind us that there are, in fact, quite a number of resources around. It's still, yeah, as you say, important to contextualize those and actually get them into circulation. And we've got another question for you, but and we'll come to that. But just can I just check, January, are you still with us? And Rebekah and Mukunda, you're still with us, I hope? Because we've just got about 10 minutes left. And so now's an opportunity to ask any of our presenters any question. So please, everybody, feel free to dive in with your questions or comments. Just you may just want to put a point of view on what you've heard or related topics. Please put your comments in or further questions. But Margaretha, can you respond to this one, please, from Kaysen? How is it possible? This is in the Q&A box. How is it possible to include mental health curriculum in the school, and within this include provision to do in-school referrals of students?
This is a good question. That's why I'm doing my PhD.
We'll have the answers then.
I hope that I can answer this better when I finish my PhD. But if I may share my idea, yeah. I see that in several countries, they already start this movement because it's supported by the national policy. For example, in Indonesia, they already start to acknowledge that there's this need of health and mental health topics into the curriculum. Most of them put that either in biology or in sport and health subject. Yeah, so they kind of integrated it. But I have to admit, most of them still with clinical perspective. So, for example, they will teach in health, like biology, what are substance addiction, how you should avoid it. So the idea is how to prevent problem, but not so much into developing what is well-being. What should you do when you're having stress? What should you do when you're dealing with unhappiness? You want to achieve your goals. Yeah. So perhaps we can do better. We can create a subject within our curriculum about health and well-being. Why not? Because obviously we need to calculate, but we also need to be able to solve our problem. That's like daily basis ability and not so much are being taken care of. Trust me, if we can do this, we will prevent so many problems.
Yeah,
it's a lot easier.
Margaretha, can I just sneak a question in as well? I mean, Rebekah and Mukunda and January, you might have comments on this as well. But I mean, what's the role of children and youth themselves in this? I mean, I think one of the things I take from Rebekah and Mukunda's research is that children and youth are actually quite adaptable. They find their own ways to deal with challenges and often support each other in those efforts. We can sometimes. I'm not certainly not suggesting you make this, but it's possible to make the mistake that this is all about what schools and governments and agencies and counsellors and it's their job to fix it, when in fact children and youth may have many of the answers themselves. What's the role of children and youth in advancing their own mental well-being?
Hi, Nigel.
Hi.
I would agree that children and youth absolutely have the capacity to particularly be involved in the prevention side of things that you were talking about. And so they're very good at organising themselves. They have passion, they have time, and they can really take a hold of a cause and go with it and completely lead it. So I would say in terms of prevention, absolutely. And even and spreading the message of what to do when their friends struggle as well. I think they can really jump a hold of that and can be part of the support network for each other. And yeah, we've seen lots of stories of that, of kids in child clubs or youth leaders who really want to mentor younger children as well. There's lots of stories of that around the world.
Margaretha, is this getting attention in the types of programs you're looking at?
Yes, but unfortunately, it's not yet facilitated in the policy. If we target the government, the policymaker, to create more support, for example, all schools should have school counselor, for example. That will help so much in terms of dealing with at-risk students. Yeah. And we all going to deal with this. 20 to 30% of our students will face in some time in their moment support, some kind of support. It's not just prevention anymore. So, but and this school counselor should have a network of collaboration with mental health professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists. They don't have to be in the school, it's too much, but they will be required for 3% to 12% of our students. So we need to provide this network of support. In addition to your previous question, there is this one example in Surabaya, Indonesia, where the Education Council understand that actually youth can be peer counselor for their peer. So what they do is they equip this a certain number of students, usually like good students, and they were given like basic counseling services, at least to be ear for listening for their peer, and it's really helped. That can tackle the minor problem, but this peer, they can tell the school counselor if the student require further services. So it's good system too.
Yeah, and January, just bring you in, please, as well. I mean, in your model of the teacher researcher that you're developing, is this a topic that's of interest to teacher researchers? I mean, is this something they want to investigate further, the whole area of students' mental health and the role of schools in promoting mental health? Is this coming up as an area of interest for teacher researchers?
Yeah, yes, actually, so I will not turn on my video. I'm using my mobile data. So actually, we just recently concluded our mental health program study, and we are on, I'm one of the study leaders, and we're going with the implementation of the program that we have actually developed. So on mental health, these are both for students and teachers, and in terms of mental health literacy, how the teachers involved could actually, or how the teachers themselves could actually help in the mental well-being of our students. And yes, the students, we have our long-running peer counselors organization. It's a university-based organization and a college organization wherein students have just an open space where they could just share with one another. Another thing is that our guidance counselors have actually direct contact with psychiatrists in the Bicol Regional Training and Teaching Hospital. So it's like the collaboration that was already mentioned earlier. They have actually started doing that. So now we are just on the stage wherein we're writing all of these things, like we're naming them. Some of the practices have already been some have already been implemented, but they are not just like institutionalized and have not been put into really formal writing. So that's what we are doing so that we could get really funding and support from the government. So just formalizing everything. But in terms of support to the students and how the students themselves are actually helping one another and really being the frontliners in terms of helping their peers, they have actually they're actually doing that in essence and in practice. So yeah.
Great, thanks, January. Good to hear. Are there any final questions for any of our presenters? There's a comment and a question here. Mukunda, you're pointing out participation of child and youth all the way from program design to review and learning would have better impact in what we do. Yep, they are smarter than we think. I completely agree, which we have seen and learned in different projects in several countries. And Rebekah, you've put here one of Transform Aid's partners coach volunteers to touch base with, so one of the partners, they coach volunteers to touch base with families to support them through various issues. Okay, interesting. We should take a look at that. And just quickly, there's a question, Rebekah and Mukunda, are you doing any follow-up study of the children or the issues that you've investigated?
Let me jump in back here. It's a good question, actually. We haven't really thought about it, but definitely this is something we can do. But actually what we do is we do have a system called annual survey of child and youth from different programs. It's our regular survey. And then through this learning, what we have decided now is we have included a section in our regular survey in relation to disaster. In current context is COVID. So definitely there will be a part of follow-up of what we have seen, but we haven't really thought to redo the exact survey again.
Be interesting, wouldn't it? It'd be some great data to learn from. Yeah. We're actually out of time, everybody. We need to wrap up. It's been a great session. Thank you, everybody. Great questions and comments and terrific papers, presentations. January, thank you. And you've been able to stay online through technical challenges from the Philippines. Great to have you and great to hear about your work. Rebekah and Mukunda, terrific research. Thank you for sharing that with us. And Margaretha, same, really great presentation on such a big and important topic. It's challenging students and schools everywhere, I think. Really good session. Thanks, everybody. And we've got some appreciative comments in the chat, so that I concur. Let's close the session there. Tim, thank you so much for your help and support getting us through the session, and we'll wrap up. And please enjoy the rest of the conference today, and I hope our paths cross again before too long. Thanks, everybody. We'll close it there.
Thank you.